Really quick, before this video gets started, I wanted to announce that I now have a Patreon that is live that you can go to right now. I have 4 different tiers at the moment, all coming with their own different perks, but it's something that I am very, very, very excited about, and it's something that you guys have been asking me about for a while, so hope you're excited too. While I was trying to figure out how to print stickers from home, I ended up with way too many of this design. I have 20 of them, so the first 20 people who join the art club tier that I have available, along with the regular monthly stickers that you will get, you will also receive one of these. Since they were testing stickers, a lot of them are far from perfect, but I have no idea what to do with them. So you have your own special defect sticker, along with a regular, good quality sticker that you will get in the month. Like I said, there are only 20 of those, so if you want one, you gotta go there fast, so please and thank you. So for those of you interested in my Patreon, hope to see you there, and for those of you who aren't or can't afford to, that's fine. I wouldn't want anyone to go to my Patreon if they themselves aren't in the best financial situation, so don't worry about that. But anyone who is going to be a part of my Patreon, thank you, I really appreciate it, and let's get on with the video. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Hope you're doing well. In case you missed it, I've been a little obsessed with a game recently called Deltarune. I don't know why, it's in the title probably. If you click on the video, I'm assuming you know what Deltarune is. But I have been in love with this game for quite a while, and pretty much since the beginning of Deltarune, and by pretty much I mean literally since the beginning, since we got chapter 1, there's been a little theory going around that Ralsei isn't entirely what he seems to be. More specifically, that he's gonna be the bad guy in the end. He's gonna be evil, little fluffy goat boy. But while I think the Ralsei is evil theory is definitely an interesting theory, personally, I never really believed it. Another thing that I never really believed is that Ralsei is actually Asriel. I have seen people disagree with the theory that Ralsei will be evil, and I have seen people say that Ralsei isn't Asriel, but I haven't really seen people go in depth as to why. There are definitely people who believe the Ralsei is evil theory who really analyze things and look into it, but then the people who don't believe in that theory are just kind of like, nah, and then just kind of leave it at that. And so I thought I would be the one to take a look into that. A couple of things real quick. First of all, obviously this will contain massive spoilers for all of the story of Deltarune that we have so far. If you wanted to play this game for yourself, or if you have not completed the game fully, I would highly recommend saving this video for another time because I don't want to spoil it for you. And number 2, I could be entirely wrong. I am pretty confident in the things that I'm gonna be saying in this video, but I don't want it to come off as all, I'm a genius and you're dumb if you believe this theory. Because honestly, whether or not Ralsei is evil, it could go either way. I don't know, I'm not Toby Fox, I'm not writing the game. But I thought I would play devil's advocate, which is only ever said by people who are about to say great things, as we all know. But if you believe the theories, that's fine. That's cool. I'm just here to give my 2 cents on it because there's a lot to be considered with Ralsei that I don't think people really consider. First, I will talk about how Ralsei isn't Asriel because I think that's a little bit of a shorter discussion to have. Hi there, it's editing Oliver. How you doing? I just wanted to step in and say this might seem like a massive tangent talking about how Ralsei isn't Asriel when the main topic of the video is how Ralsei won't be evil, but I think one reason that people consider Ralsei to be truly evil in the end or whatever is because people go under the assumption that him and Asriel are one and the same, and obviously if you played Undertale, we all know that Asriel isn't a super cool, chill, pacifistic guy. I did want to mention my reasons as to why I don't think Ralsei is Asriel, because I do think that it is relevant to the whole whether or not he will be evil thing. So immediately at the end of chapter 1, when Ralsei took off his hat, people were like, oh, it's Asriel. For anyone who was familiar with Undertale, immediately thought it was Asriel. I never thought that. And it is very clear that there is some connection between Ralsei and Asriel. They're both goats connected to Chris somehow. Their names are anagrams of each other. There are specific species of monsters, but for a lot of the main characters, the only time the same species is used multiple times is if characters are related to one another. So like the only goat characters that we've seen in Undertale are Toriel, Asgore, and Asriel. The only skeletons we've seen were Sans and Papyrus. The only ghosts that we've seen were Mettaton, Mad Dummy, and Napstablook. I don't believe that Ralsei is a goat just because. In the end, he will have some connection to our little dreamer family, but I don't think that he's Asriel, and here is why. The first thing is his appearance. Obviously, anyone who has played both Deltarune and Undertale know that there are crossover characters. And aside from a costume change here and there, every single character looks pretty much identical to the way that they did in Undertale. And if we look at Ralsei and Asriel, they don't look identical. And you might say, oh, well, Asriel is in college and he's older, so that's why they don't look exactly alike, because the Asriel in Deltarune is older than the Asriel in Undertale. And while that is true, I still have to disagree. We don't have exact canon ages on any of the characters, but we do know that Chris and Susie are in high school, presumably. If not very late middle school, but I'm pretty confident that they're supposed to be in high school. And then Asriel is off in college, or university, as they put it. So I am going to be basing all of this off of phrases and things based in America, because I am 99% sure that Toby Fox is American, so I'm assuming that any writing regarding the school system will probably be based on America. At least when I googled him, it said he's American, and as we all know, Google is always right. And here in America, we do have college and university, which are technically different things, but they are very similar. Asriel's in college, and here in America, when you go to college initially, typically the age is 18 or 19. Sometimes you can go when you're 17, but that's a different scenario. On average, you go to college in your first year when you are 18 or 19. So if Asriel is just beginning college at the youngest, he's about 18 or 19 years old. Chris and company, they're in high school, and here in America, when you are in high school, you range from ages 14 to 18. Since Asriel is Chris's older brother, I'm assuming that the oldest Chris would be is 16. So my best guess for the whole gang, since they're all in the same class, would be 15, 16 years old. And we don't have an exact age on Ralsei, but I'm assuming he's about the same age. He looks about the same age. Although to be fair, I am just assuming, and it's entirely possible that he is older, but I don't look at Ralsei and see an 18-year-old, I'm gonna be honest. All things considered, when you look at their ages, it doesn't really make sense that Ralsei would be Asriel, but I think the even bigger reason Ralsei just cannot be Asriel is because of his relation to Chris. Asriel is Chris's older brother. Wouldn't Chris recognize Ralsei? I feel like they'd be able to recognize their own brother, and it is very easy to say, like, oh, well, Chris is controlled by the player, and they can't say anything about it. But we do see instances of Chris acting and speaking on their own while the player's soul is inside of them. The 3 examples that I can think of is in chapter 1, at the very end when you fight the king, after Ralsei heals the king, and he's just like, psych, and he attacks you. We don't control Chris when they go to protect Susie. That was entirely of their own accord. We did not get an option to do that. And then in chapter 2, after you split up from Susie and Ralsei and you first meet Birdly while Noelle is hiding, they talk about their companions. And Birdly's like, your friends left you. Fucking sucks to be a loser, dude. I'm kidding. Can you imagine if those are his exact words, though? And then after, Birdly's like, what? Noelle and Queen? We don't see Chris's dialogue, but it is assumed that after Birdly said that, Chris was like, what about Noelle and Queen? Again, speaking when the player does not have the option to make Chris speak. And the last example that I could think of is at the end of chapter 2, if you go to the police station and get the box of chocolates from Undyne, when you go to give them to Alphys, she initially thinks it's from Chris, but then Chris clarifies that it's actually a gift from Undyne. Again, speaking when the player does not have the choice to make them speak. It's 100% possible that all of that means nothing, but it is some food for thought. Maybe the player doesn't have total control over Chris, just they just mostly control them. Or maybe there are certain instances where Chris is able to overpower the soul that's inside of them. We don't know. We only have chapter 2 out of all 7, so. But if all of that isn't enough to convince you, there is one more big reason that I highly doubt Ralsei is Asriel. And to help me explain this is our little friend Susie. We don't know for a fact that Susie knows who Asriel is, but other characters like Noelle and Birdly, they all seem to know Asriel in some cases very well, especially because Noelle grew up with Chris. And while I don't believe that we see Susie mention Asriel at all on her own, if seemingly every other character in the town knows who Asriel is, we can assume Susie does too, especially since Susie knows Chris's mom. She knows that Toriel is Chris's mom. Well, it's Ralsei took off his hat, I have a feeling Susie would have been like, you're fucking Asriel, dude. Because knowing Susie, she is 100% the type of person to say that. You cannot convince me otherwise. And also, now that I'm thinking about it, Noelle definitely would have said something, because she definitely 100% knows who Asriel is, and we know that for a fact. She knows Asriel so well to the point where she calls him Azzy. They're on nickname basis, my guys. And I just have a feeling that as soon as Noelle saw Ralsei, she would have just been like, oh, Asriel. Because unlike Chris and Susie, she never saw Ralsei with his hat on, and she didn't get the whole I'm the prince from the dark type of thing. And immediately when she saw Chris and Susie in the dark world, she immediately identified them as Chris and Susie, despite the fact that things like their skin color and their hair color are different, not to mention the dramatic costume change. And so even if Ralsei was some sort of dark world appearance of Asriel, Noelle should still be able to recognize him. The whole Ralsei and Asriel thing seems like a little bit of a tangent from the whole Ralsei being evil thing, but a lot of the people were under the assumption that Ralsei is Asriel, and I think that is a big reason why people think Ralsei will be evil in the end, because if we look at what Asriel did in Undertale, shit kind of hit the fan, and Flowey's not a super cool dude. And I guess another quick point to make is that we do see connections of Asriel with flowers. If you look on Asriel's side of the room, there's a poster of a golden flower, and even Asgore keeps the flowers from the original 7 human souls in Undertale. He keeps flowers coordinating to those colors in his flower shop, but we don't see any sort of connection between Ralsei and flowers. That is more of a minor thing, but just something else, you know, food for thought. I think the biggest connection that Ralsei does have to Flowey is if you choose to do the tutorial in chapter 1, Ralsei talks to Chris about the soul and says, that's your soul, the culmination of your being, which is, I believe, an exact quote from Flowey in Undertale when he gives you the tutorial. And seeing that Asgore directly mimics exactly how you meet him in Undertale in Deltarune for the first time, I don't want to completely rule out the whole Ralsei and Flowey thing, but it's also entirely possible that that is just how a soul is described in Deltarune and Undertale, because the soul is the culmination of your being. While the wording is a bit specific, it is entirely possible that it is just a nod to people who have played Undertale, but I'll let you be the judge of that. People also tend to suspect Ralsei because he seems to be very overly sweet and overly innocent and cutesy a lot of the time. And a lot of people have speculated that that's not actually how Ralsei is, but that's just sort of a front that he's putting on, I guess. Basically, if he's a bad guy playing the role as a good guy, he's going all out and being like super kind and nice. But chapter 2 kind of gave us a little bit of insight as to why Ralsei is like that. We don't know exactly how much interaction with other people Ralsei has had in the past, but it is very much implied that it was little to none. And before he met Chris and Susie, he talked about how he really wanted to be friends with them, and he thought that the only way to really be friends with someone is to be really nice, which is why he's super sweet. But he's beginning to realize that there's a lot more to it than that. He even says that he doesn't even know what being Ralsei-like is, because he assumed that to be friends with people, he just really needed to be nice, but meeting someone like Susie showed him that that's not really all there is. Hi there, editing Oliver again. Something I wanted to point out that I'm just realizing for the first time while editing, it's not just about not having contact with other people. Ralsei said that his whole life he was preparing to meet the 2 heroes of the legend in order to seal the Dark Fountains, and it was all that preparation that made him really want to be friends with them. And so a combination of wanting to be friends with them and not really knowing anything besides the legend and sealing Dark Fountains, both of those things combined made Ralsei who he is today, and that's kind of what he means by saying that he doesn't really know what Ralsei, is. It's entirely possible that he wants to be good friends with them so bad so that way sealing the Dark Fountains goes well, which is why he's super nice to them all of the time, even in times where he probably shouldn't be. And so I do think in future chapters, we will see a shift in Ralsei's character. I don't think he's gonna do a complete 180 and just be a jerk, but I do think we will see a little bit more of genuine Ralsei being Ralsei, because he is beginning to realize that being friends with someone is more than being nice. Sure, this could mean he's gonna be evil, but I don't think it will. Because if the main reason that you think him being super nice is suspicious, we know why. It's because he wanted to be friends. It's very possible that he's lying, but there's nothing to really back that. Another point that I thought was very interesting is actually from Silent Chatterbox 52 here on YouTube. I have been obsessed with their Undertale and Deltarune Iceberg videos, and if you have some hours to spare, I would recommend watching them. They are very good, but my god, there's a lot of hours put into that. But after Chapter 2 of Deltarune was released, they made a follow-up video to the previous Iceberg videos and asked the question, why doesn't Ralsei turn to stone like Lancer and Rule's card? But there are two things that are to be made note of. First off, at the end of Chapter 2, we see Rule's card, and he is not entirely stoned. When you are about to fight the queen and you are making your thrash machine, Rule's card isn't entirely stone. His head is still not stone. Probably should have thought of a better way to phrase that. But he is still able to talk and do whatever a head does. But then we have Lancer, who entirely turned to stone. And then, obviously, Ralsei didn't at all turn to stone, so maybe it is something that affects each Darkener differently. Maybe it entirely depends on that specific Darkener's power. We don't really know. This is the first time we've seen that happen, and we don't know if it'll happen in future chapters, but only time will tell. Although another thing I'm noticing for the first time while editing, in Snowgrave, Rule's card does completely turn to stone, so I don't really know what happened there. Is it an oversight? Who knows? But I think the biggest explanation that there is as to why Ralsei didn't turn to stone is because of the fountain in Castletown. Ralsei said that it is made of pure darkness and any Darkener can live there. And the reason that Darkeners turn to stone whenever they go to a dark world other than their own, aside from Castletown, it's because the darkness isn't the same. It's not compatible. And so we see Lancer and Rule's card from their own specific dark world. They're able to survive in Castletown, but not in the cyber world. And that's because they are from Card Castle. Ralsei is from Castletown. If the fountain within a specific dark world is what gives a Darkener its shape, and the fountain in Castletown is made of pure darkness, and any Darkener can live there, it can be assumed that that's why Ralsei doesn't turn to stone when he goes into other dark worlds, because he is from a world where that dark fountain is made of pure darkness, and so presumably he's also made of pure darkness and can survive in any dark world. So those are some housekeeping stuff. I don't really want to call it housekeeping stuff. They're pretty big important points, but there are specific instances where Ralsei acts suspicious. And if you are of the belief that Ralsei is evil, you're probably like, well, Oliver, why didn't you do that? We're gonna talk about that now. And I do want to preface all of it by saying Ralsei definitely knows more than he lets on. Regardless of whether or not he will be evil in the end, we don't know, but I 100% agree. He knows more than what he's telling Chris and Susie. He 100% knows. And the main reason I believe this is because both in Chapter 1 and in Chapter 2, Ralsei is like, oh, aren't you curious as to what Susie's doing whenever she goes off on her own? In Chapter 1, you don't get the option to skip it. But in Chapter 2, if you do refuse, he is very insistent that you're like, oh, are you sure? I mean, don't you want to know what they're doing in there? Those pesky lesbians. Sorry. But he is very, very pushy that you do go to Susie. And a lot of people have taken this to mean that Ralsei knows about the player, and there is something that he wants Chris to know, but something that he doesn't want the player to know. And I think that is entirely possible. What that something is, I have no idea. But I think a lot of people assumed that Ralsei knows about the player, and I strongly believe that he does. Another comparison that Ralsei and Flowey have is that they both have a belief that they really try to push. Flowey is very much of the mindset, it's either kill or be killed, and that's something that he really reiterates over and over and over again. And with Ralsei, it's that you need to be a pacifist and to be nice to everybody. But I have a feeling that the reason that Ralsei is pushing that belief is because he knows about the player, which to me kind of eliminates not all possibility, but most possibilities that Ralsei is evil. I think that he is really pushing to be a pacifist, and to make the right choice because he is aware of the player's presence. Deltarune has a very big theme of your choices don't matter. Let me ask you the question. whose choices don't matter. I think that that question will have a lot of different answers. Scratch that. I think it has a lot of different answers, and I think it will continue to have some different answers. So first off, there is Chris. I believe your choices don't matter can apply to Chris as well as the player, because quite literally, a lot of Chris's choices don't matter. If Chris is being controlled by the player, they have no autonomy. They can't do anything. We have seen that the only time Chris is able to act on their own is when the soul in the player is not present, which is why they, you know, it's pretty fucking metal, not gonna lie. And I think Ralsei knows about this. Going back to Ralsei being aware of the player, Ralsei very clearly knows what souls are. He's the one who explained it to us. And so I think those instances where Ralsei is really adamant that we pay attention to Susie and not them, I think there is something that Ralsei wants to talk to Chris about. Possibly about choice, because Ralsei is the only person who has ever said your choices matter. We have no idea what Ralsei wants to talk to Chris about, and so me saying that it's about choice is purely just a guess. I think given the theme of the game, it's a pretty good guess, but I have nothing to back that up. That's just my own personal guess. It could really be anything. But after both instances, Ralsei says something along the lines of, so that's why, Chris, okay? Also, just a side note, I am very curious as to whether or not he knows that we can't control Susie. It's very much implied he knows more than he lets on, but we don't know how much he knows. I don't know how much that would change in terms of Ralsei being evil or good or whatever, but I am very curious as to what that means, because he does direct us to Susie specifically. Sure, she's the only other party member, but Ralsei could have said, like, what do you think Birdley's doing? What do you think Noelle's doing? But it was always Susie. But I do definitely think the reason that Ralsei is really, really adamant about being a pacifist is because he does believe our choices matter. And so if we look at the player for a second, yeah, there are definitely points where our choices do not matter at all. If we go back to Susie, our choices don't matter when we're watching Susie. You can pick whichever options you want. Susie will just say whatever. It'll be the same every time because we are not in control of Susie. We are in control of Chris. And then in chapters 1 and 2, it doesn't really matter if you are a pacifist or if you fight everybody. Sure, there are some dialogue changes here and there, but generally the course of the story is the same. At least for chapter 1.
Proceed.
It's our time to talk about our fun little friend, Snowgrave. Snowgrave changes so much of what we knew about the world of Deltarune, because Snowgrave showed us choices do matter. Chris's choices don't matter. The player's choices matter. Snowgrave showed us that we as a player do have the power to control and manipulate and kill. That is something that the player is capable of doing. Chris's choices still don't matter because the player does that. Chris doesn't do that. They just have to sit by as you just convince their friend that murder is fine and you kill a bunch of people and there's nothing they can do about it. I'll get a little bit on the manipulation thing a little bit later, but I believe very strongly that Ralsei knows about this possibility. Chapter 1, yeah, your choices don't matter. Very consistent theme. Chapter 2, generally your choices don't matter, but there is Snowgrave. It is a secret route. Most players just doing a casual playthrough of Deltarune probably will never stumble upon Snowgrave on their own. There are some pretty specific things that need to happen to activate Snowgrave. Very specific choices that you, the player, have to make. And I do think that the whole your choices don't matter thing will continue to have some part in Deltarune throughout the story, but I also believe that your choices will matter more and more as each chapter comes out. But I believe Ralsei knows this. I believe Ralsei knows that the player's choices will matter, at least a little bit in the end, which is why he's so adamant about being a pacifist. Because the moment your choices matter, what happened? You fucking kill people. But speaking of your choices don't matter, Noelle's choices also don't matter. That YouTuber I mentioned earlier, in that same chapter 2 video that they made, they said our choices don't matter, but Noelle's do. I highly disagree. It wasn't Noelle choosing to do all of that. And in Snowgrave, if you do choose to do Snowgrave, she does mention that whenever she'll attack, she would hear a voice telling her what to do, and then things would get all fuzzy. And then even after she uses the Snowgrave spell itself, she's like, what happened? I don't know what just happened. And so while we aren't controlling Noelle directly, it's clear that we are manipulating her through Chris somehow, whether that's like emotional manipulation or physically, similar to how we're physically controlling Chris. We don't know. There's just so much about this world that we just simply don't know. But I think Your Choices Matter is also extending to other characters, because obviously we have Chris and Susie, who are party members, but we're never able to, like, make them kill anybody. The enemies just, like, run away. And the storyline with them stays generally the same. It's only when Noelle joins the party that, like, things can really hit the fan and go awful. And it seems like Noelle's choices don't matter as much as Chris's, more so than anybody else's, because she has the ability to kill and us, the player, make her do it. Alright, it's editing Oliver popping into the video for the last time. When people think about Noelle during Snowgrave, basically everyone assumes that Noelle does what she does because Chris is telling her to do it, and she trusts Chris. And even though she does make notes of hearing a strange voice, so she calls it, or saying that Chris's voice sounds weird, while it is implied to be the player character speaking to Noelle or commanding Noelle, she assumes that it's Chris. And so a lot of people assume that she has choices and she is not exactly volunteering, but choosing to do things because Chris is telling her to, and that Chris is manipulating her, and by Chris I mean the player. But that is not true, at least I don't think so. Because if we look at the fight with Birdley and Snowgrave, when you keep telling Noelle to do Snowgrave and she keeps telling you over and over again, no, I don't know that spell, you can have that entire interaction while Chris is down. I'm assuming she can see the fact that Chris is down and that Chris is unconscious, I guess? Would you say they're unconscious when they're down like that? But every single other time when Chris tells her to, like, proceed or do this or do that, she's having a conversation with Chris, but here she's having a conversation with the player. And so when Noelle is having that conversation, I'm not sure who she thinks she's talking to. I don't know if she thinks she's still talking to Chris. I can assume not, because she can see Chris out on the floor. But then the outcome is the same. Even with Chris fainted, you can still have Noelle cast Snowgrave. And so when it comes to Noelle's choices not mattering, I'm leaning now more towards we are somehow physically manipulating her in a similar way that we are to Chris. Because if you essentially remove Chris out of the situation, we can still control Noelle. So maybe Noelle's choices matter a lot less than some people realize, and even I realized. So just another thing I wanted to mention here, because I think that that's very interesting. I definitely think that Noelle is going to have a lot of ties in the story, especially because obviously in Snowgrave we see what she's capable of. But like I said, most players won't encounter Snowgrave on their own. And then in chapter 2, the queen will say, Noelle is very strong, and that's why I want Noelle, and things like that. But unless you do Snowgrave specifically, we don't really see a whole lot of that. Obviously, she's a party member. Obviously, she can do stuff, but the queen really made this emphasis on, I want Noelle specifically. In the car ride with Chris and Noelle, I'm sorry, anonymous robot friend, the queen says Noelle is strong, and that's why I need her. Before I knew about Snowgrave, that kind of confused me, because she didn't seem too different from other characters, but clearly she's very different, being the only character capable of murder. So that's fun. But I definitely think that as chapters go on, Noelle is going to become more and more vital. Sorry, went on a little Noelle tangent for a second. Summary of it all. Don't believe Ralsei is Asriel. Don't believe Ralsei will be evil. The reason he's so adamant about you being a pacifist is because he knows that, at least to some extent, your choices will matter. And you do have the ability to murder people, so you should not do that. Again, we don't know how much Ralsei knows. I'm assuming that he knows you're able to murder people, given that he implies to know about the player's existence, and he's the only character who says your choices matter. And just everything else considered in this video, I don't think it's a big stretch to say that Ralsei knows that the player is able to kill people at some point. And if he's evil, isn't that what he would want? Of course, we don't know Ralsei's end goal, assuming there is an end goal aside from sealing the fountains. But I just have a feeling if he genuinely was evil, if he knew the player was able to kill someone, he wouldn't want to he would want you to do that. Again, I'm pretty confident in a lot of the things that I'm saying in this video. I'm not right. I'm not gonna say I'm right, but for a second, let's assume that I am right about everything I said in this video. I will be the first to admit there is one big thing that doesn't make a whole lot of sense if Ralsei knows as much as we've said he knows, and that is the fight with Neo Spampton. After the battle, Susie's like, the fuck? Like, we talk about that? That was weird as shit. And Ralsei is the one to be like, I don't think that meant anything. But that doesn't make sense to me. Because even if Ralsei doesn't know about the player specifically, it's very clear that he knows that something is going on. Why else would he be the only character to tell us that our choices matter? Why else would he try to direct the player away from him and Chris so they can have a private conversation? If he knows that much, it doesn't really make sense for him to say that didn't mean anything. The best explanation that I can think of is because Susie was present. I feel like if Susie wasn't there, it's possible Ralsei would have been a lot more open about it and talked to Chris about it. But every single time Ralsei talks about your choices mattering or hinting at knowing the player, it's always when Ralsei and Chris are alone. So it's entirely possible that he just doesn't want Susie to know about all of that for whatever reason. I have zero evidence to back that up. That is entirely speculation, and really it's just the best explanation that I can come up with for something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I feel like even if we were to go under the assumption that Ralsei is evil, I feel like that's just a weird thing to say. Like, after going through an experience like that, to say that it just didn't mean anything, it's very odd. If you have any thoughts, feel free to let me know, because I'm stumped on that one. I hope I was able to provide some interesting food for thought. I'm sorry if this video is a little bit messy. I tried my best to organize it, but you know, not that simple for me. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if I was able to change your mind on all of this. If you think Ralsei is evil, let me know why. Feel free to leave a comment explaining why you do think it is. And if you don't understand Deltarune at all, why did you watch this video? If you were also in the camp of not thinking Ralsei was evil, hopefully I was able to put some of your thoughts into words. I can definitely keep rambling on and on and on about Deltarune. So let me know if there's any other topics you'd like me to talk about with it. I'm definitely more than happy to talk about it on my channel, clearly. And with a game with lore like this, there's just so much to discuss. So let me know if there's any other topics you'd like me to talk about. Maybe I'll talk about him. You guys like it when I ramble about the shit that I love, so I'd be happy to do it more. But I think that's about all I have for you for this video, so if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts on what I said and the drawing. I didn't talk about it, like, at all in this video, but still. And if you're new here, hello, my name is Oliver. I make a lot of art in this channel. Sometimes I'll make videos like this, talking about series that I like. Sometimes I'll talk about art more specifically. I just do whatever I want, really. But if any of that is interesting to you, feel free to subscribe. I would love to have you. You can listen to me burp in my videos. I'm sure that's something you really want. And if you want to see more from me, you can follow me on social media. Those will be shown on screen now and linked in the description box below. And if you want to see more of my videos, you can check those out. Those will also be on screen now, as well as in the iCard. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.